Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by the members of oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with manicexpression.com, the website where you can truly express yourself.
And the masters of the universe. I am Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull, I have Cringer became the mighty Battle Cat, and I became HeMan, the most powerful man in the universe. Only 3 others share this secret. Our friends, the Sorceress, Man-at-Arms, and Orko. Together we defend Castle Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Casual Chats. As usual, I'm Kevin.
And I'm Patricia.
And we have a lot to talk about, including what we're going to be talking about in our Casual Chats. But first off, let me just say that a little update with what's going on, what we have been doing, and what I've been doing. Yesterday, I was on a Beware the Batman kick, and I have caught up with all the episodes on demand. Whoever created on demand was a genius, because you get to keep up with all. If you didn't get to watch it on the exact day, you get to watch it on demand. So I made a vow that I was going to keep up with Beware the Batman because I really wanted to, I wanted to be, I love Batman. Aside from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I am a Batman fan. So I really wanted to watch and check it out. And I only got to see 2 episodes. Also, Patty and I have done we did 2 first impressions on Beware the Batman. So we really have to do a podcast of what we think. And so far, there's only 6 episodes. So I've been busy with that, and once we do a Beware the Batman, I'll give everybody my full opinion on it, what I think about it, and stuff like that. So far, it's something to get used to. I like it, but there are some things that they could do a lot better on. It's too early to say because we're only on the 6th episode, but I definitely would like to watch more episodes and give more of an intake on an opinion on what I feel about it, and so will Patty. Also, we're in September, and September means that for those who are Turtled fans, we're just around the corner for Season 2. We don't have an exact date on when Season 2 will start, but it is confirmed that there'll be a release date in September, probably the 16th or whatever. I'm assuming because that's when all the new Nickelodeon shows are coming in, so I'm assuming that they want to start putting in all the other shows. So, we're looking forward to that. Also, 2014, I just got a roster, Patty, of all the movies that are coming out next year. So far, we've got Muppets Most Wanted. We've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The sequel to X-Men First Class, the sequel to The Hunger Games, Maleficent, 50 Shades of Grey, the RoboCop remake, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Captain America 2, Into the Woods, Godzilla, which is a remake/reboot, and Peabody and Mr. Sherman. So we've got a lot of roster of movies coming out in 2014, which is to be determined how we feel about that. But right now, Patty, what kind of updates do you have that you want to say before we begin our podcast?
Well, a couple of updates that I want to give off is that... Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
On September 26th or 27th, let me just double check on my calendar, actually, now that we're talking about this. Oh, yes. September 27th, which is on a Friday, Kevin and I will be going to the Nickelodeon on 92nd Street event. That is basically the upcoming book called Slimed, An Oral History of Nickelodeon Golden Age by Matthew Klickstein will be promoted on this event, and there's going to be a ton of people over there. And we already discussed about this briefly in the last casual chat, but just wanted to give you a quick reminder that if any of you guys are going to this event, pop by and definitely say hello to us. Also, another thing, on Saturday, September 28th, that is going to be on the next day, Kevin and I will be going to another book event, which is going to be for the promotion of the behind-the-scenes look of A Christmas Story by Cassim Gaines. You probably remember Cassim Gaines. He's the one who previously wrote the Inside Pee-wee's Playhouse book, and he was actually the first person that we ever interviewed for Old School Aim. So if any of you guys are going to that event, please stop by and say hello. Information will be on the links below. Also, another thing that we want to bring up is that now that we're closing in on episode 20, we actually have a very, very special guest coming in. I know that we've been having a lot of other special guests in the past. We've had Mark Wiener, we've had Craig Bartlett, we've had Renee Jacobs, but, this one is actually going to be really special, and you'll have to stay tuned for that. Also... Yes.
Sorry, guys. I know we constantly kept saying that this is our special guest, but trust me, this is going to be our Christmas present to you. And we told you, and you wanted something really, really bad, and we're telling you can't open it not on Christmas Eve, but on Christmas Day. So trust me, the wait is worth it. So I know we've been keeping you at the edge of your seats, but it will be worth it. So as soon as the day comes, we will let you know who we'll be interviewing, so just sit tight and stay tuned.
Yes, and also we have another special guest for Turtle Talk. This special guest is going to be hugely special. If you think that Christmas present is going to be really special for episode 20, then this present is going to be like the last day of Hanukkah, where you get like the biggest present out of all of them.
We're really spoiling you guys. Oh my god.
I know. It's like one day we give you a piece of pie, and then afterwards we give you a gigantic slice of cake.
Yeah, but we love you guys, so don't worry about it. But anyway, if Patty has any more stuff, we'll just get the ball rolling.
Let's see. The only thing that I need to quickly brush up on is that there's going to be a Manic Expression movie coming out called A Sight in Scarlet that will be coming out like around January, and Kevin and I will be in it. And also, another thing, Creative Chaos, which is Manic Expression's first documentary, will be coming out sometime maybe in November or December. And also look forward to that. And as for any other updates, I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered it. Alright, so let's get on to today's topic. Kevin, please tell us about it.
Sure. Okay, guys. Well, there has been... Well, first off, I really want to say that I'm very excited about this particular podcast. Needless to say, I was always excited about any podcast I did with Patty. But this one in particular really hits home because this is something that I really like, and I was very looking forward to it. When Patty said she wanted to do a podcast to it, I immediately said, let's do it. But our schedules had conflicted, so that's why we're doing it now. And we're doing this a little early because, you know, we're really excited about doing this, and we kind of want to be the first ones to do it. So, anyway, a particular character will be turning the big 3-0. And this particular character has become an icon. He was, I know I just gave it away, but this particular character, he was the topic of, when you talk about the 1980s, you cannot think about not talking about this particular character. He has started almost 3 animated incarnations. The toy line to this character has become one of the most sought-out collectibles and one of the biggest childhood memories, aside from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Real Ghostbuster, Barbie, Gem Dolls, My Pet Monster, Transformers, you name it. When you talk about toys, you cannot think about talking about this particular character. Now, although there was a feature film that some people like and some people hate, it was still a nice attempt to some people's eyes to see this character faithfully brought to the big screen. And Sony is already cooking up a screenplay that will hopefully be a new adaptation, supposedly dark. He is none other than HeMan. HeMan and the Masters of the Universe will be turning 30. And today we're going to talk about HeMan, from action figure to small screen animated cartoon show to film to how the show holds up. In 1983, He-Man's action figures were released by Mattel. Now, Mattel had owns the right to He-Man, and they had released an action figures that was basically an overnight success. People were pulling these toys out of the toy shelves and constantly were buying them, and there was so many action figures. At the same time, an animated company known as Filmation had put out an animated series called He-Man Masters of the Universe. Now, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there was some characters on the show who made it to the action figure series, and some that wasn't. In 1987, there was a feature-length film starring Dolph Lundgren and Frank Langella as Skeletor in He-Man Masters of the Universe. It also starred a very young Courtney Cox. In 1990, a new series came out called The New Adventures of He-Man, which pitted Eternia's superhero into a distant future, along with Skeletor. Then in 2003, the same year that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was relaunched, a new series that aired on Cartoon Network called He-Man Masters of the Universe was released. And this was a slightly darker version than the Filmation, although the Filmation did have some very dark themes, which we'll get into. And that was the last we saw of He-Man. The last we saw of He-Man, he was in a commercial, along with other cartoon characters like Richie Rich and Scooby-Doo and Shaggy, Daffy, Freddy and Velma, and Casper and Mr. Magoo, and Voltron and Fat Albert and Charlie Brown, Lucy, and Linus. Well, actually, I'm sorry, I'm corrected. It was both He-Man and Battle Cat that was in that commercial. Anyway, Patty, do you know what that commercial was?
Yes, I do. Wasn't that for the what you call that insurance agency? Ooh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Can you give me a hint?
I have no idea. That's why I was asking you.
Okay. Oh,
we'll get to that anyway. Anyway, I'm sure there's going to be somebody who will, on the bottom of our comment page, will tell us what it was. Yeah. Commerce or something like that. I forgot. But anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about He-Man. Now, I actually am holding, although you can't see it, I am actually holding my He-Man action figure along with Skeletor, Tila, and Man-at-Arms. Now, and Orko. Can't forget about my Orko. Now, these action figures, I liked them as a kid. I really did. And they were cool because you had so many cool monsters and aliens to play with. You had, you had Beastman, and you had, Trapjaw, and Evelyn, and you had Buzzoff, and you had Manny Faces, and these were really cool toys to play with. And then the Ninja Turtles came out, and then you also had these mutants, and they were really cool. And each one of these action figures came with a mini comic. Now, back to the action figures, Mattel actually relaunched the He-Man Masters of the Universe action figures to collectors. And these collectors' figures did pretty well. They actually are still going on. What they did was, and I praise Mattel for this, even though Mattel really kind of sort of let us down with the Ghostbuster line, they're actually going to start releasing figures based on the Filmation series. They actually were re-releasing figures, and these are sort of like a modern collector version of the He-Man figures. They actually released characters from the He-Man universe. They're releasing all the characters, even characters that were on the New Adventures of He-Man, characters that we thought that were never even in the action figure form, that were in action figure form. So it's really cool that they're doing these different versions of He-Man and stuff like that, As for the cartoon, I love the cartoon. One of my favorite animated studios will always be Filmation, because the way their characters were drawn was so real. I always say that Filmation is like Murakami Wolf meets Walt Disney, because their animation was just so detailed, even though they were on a very slim budget. And my favorite actors were on that show, voice actors, Alan Oppenheimer, and Linda Gary. And Linda Gary, may she rest in peace, had passed away in '95, and it was the day of her birthday. She was a shy day of her birthday, and John Irwin and all that. They all voiced it and Lou Schumer, who was the executive producer who did Orko, and Erica Schumer, who was Lou Schumer's daughter. They all voiced 5-7 characters per episode. There was such a tight budget, that they all voiced it, at least maybe most of the characters. It wasn't like today where they were able to get different voice actors. It was you had 3 people in a room and they voiced 7 characters. And my professor, who is a big HeMan fan, he actually was in a local newspaper for having all the action figures displayed in his living room. He had the Castle Grayskull playset, he had Snake Mountain playset, and he had all the figures, and he still has them. But of course now he has 2 kids, and I don't think his wife really was happy that he was having these playsets around the living room. But he had them all displayed, and he was in the local newspaper for that, and it was the biggest HeMan collection ever because he had everything HeMan. But anyway, back to the Filmation. The Filmation just really was, I love the episodes. I really did. There was even an episode that talked about religious themes where HeMan actually was fighting the devil himself. There was a demon in an episode, and it was just, it was a really interesting episode. And then, of course, there was the New Adventures of HeMan. As I said on the digression session when we were talking about 80s cartoons, I never could have gotten into the later incarnations of HeMan. I don't know why. The 2003 Ninja Turtles, it grew on me, so I do like it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. For the 2003 series HeMan, I know a lot of people like it because it was dark and because the characters were more threatening, even the good guys. They sort of gave them more of a fairy tale, mythical creatures-like appearances. And I liked how they played homages to the old show. At the end, they had that, you shouldn't do this episode, don't do this, don't do that. And they even brought back one of my favorite villains called Evil Seed, who's, aside from Skeletor and Evil and Beastman and I know, he's one of my favorite villains. I just love Evil Seed. And they brought him back. But, and that's when they, in Moss Man, he did battle with Moss Man. But, I just couldn't get into them. I don't know why. I don't know why I couldn't get into it. And the same thing goes for the movie. Maybe if the movie, a lot of people don't like it, a lot of people like it. I particularly don't like it. I guess because, they didn't have Orko. They had, they had that other character, and he was I wasn't big on that. And that's because of special budget-wise, they couldn't do it. They couldn't get a character. They couldn't have because they were on such a short budget. They couldn't do a green screen or anything else like that. Where they had a character floating, stuff like that. Although I find it funny how Man-at-Arms Duncan, the only one we saw without a mustache was the action figure. But I find it funny how in the Filmation and even in the movie, they gave him a mustache. And even in the 2003 series, they gave him a mustache. But they did not give him a mustache in the first series run action figures. I don't know why. Some people did customs where they painted it on the face. More power to you. But speaking of movies, it's been confirmed that Channing Tatum will play He-Man in the upcoming Masters of the Universe movie. So far, Sony has written the script. It's in for approval. Last time I heard, they're just going over it, and then I don't know when they're going to release it. As I just gave you a roster of all the movies coming out, I probably won't come out until maybe if they get things going, because I'm happy for Channing Tatum. Him and Jenna Dawson Tatum, congratulations, just had a baby girl. I'm very happy for you guys. So, and he's got a couple of movies under his belt. So I'm guessing maybe 2015, probably 2000. It is a go, guys. No, but I'm just saying he's confirmed. He said he wants to do it. He's really excited about it. So, how do I feel about it? Well, I never seen a Channing Tatum movie, but he is built. I'm not gonna lie, he is built like He-Man. So. I'd rather have him than some scrawny guy like Rob Patterson playing him, who's pale and looks like an albino. But anyway, nevertheless, I'm really, I'm happy for him that he, that he wants to do the role. Other than that, I have more to talk about, but I want to share the floor with Patty because I know there's a lot she wants to talk about. Of course, we'll also talk a little bit about She-Ra, even though this is really about He-Man. We'll talk about She-Ra. But Patty, the floor is yours. Tell us what you think about He-Man, what do you like, and all that other jazz.
I gotta say, Kevin, that it has been about 13 minutes, and you just basically, swept the floor with everything. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. I love He-Man, so...
I know you do, which is why... Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. By the way, for you guys who... I don't know if you guys know this, and I'm going to let you guys know, they just released, about 2 months ago, the complete box set of the Filmation series, along with the 2003 series, and a few episodes of the New Adventures of He-Man in a big, nice box set that I want to get.
Wow.
I haven't had a chance to pick it up, and I keep kicking myself in the butt because I'm like, I gotta get this because it's a limited edition. It comes with the Power Sword replica, and it has this really cool design of Castle Grayskull. It's got a CD with music from the 1983 series, and all pretty much the special features from the original DVD releases. Needless to say, this DVD box set, if you are a true He-Man fan, you should definitely pick it up. There's also a new documentary that talks to fans about it, so you really should pick it up. And one thing I also want to say about the action figures, I really like how they gave some of the figures cloth clothes, like Prince Adam, and I like how Moss Man had that Moss feeling, and they even did that for the new action figure line that Mattel did. So I like the figures for that. Stinktor, which I know that they used the same head mold as Merman, but actually stunk. And a lot of parents, when they bought their kids those toys, I can't tell you how many poor Stinkors lost their lives in garbage pails or buried in the backyard because their parents thought it was a defective toy. But that was the nature of the toy called Stinkor. It was a skunk, so... But a lot of Stinkors had lost their lives back in 1983, 1984, so we salute you. But again, I'm sorry, I know I'm rambling. Patty, the floor is yours. Tell us about He-Man, what you think, and all that other stuff.
That's okay, Kev. I'm just really happy that you're able to talk about something that you absolutely love.
Oh, I love He-Man. He-Man, I know a lot of people joke around with He-Man, and it's he's a half-naked guy running around, and the animation to some people is, a lot of people don't like it, a lot of people do like it. I grew up with He-Man, so this was, when we were going to do something like this, I was really, really happy because I always wanted to do a chat dedicated to He-Man, and I love He-Man.
Yeah, and what better way to do a casual chat on He-Man than the 30th anniversary of the franchise.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, and also, another thing besides the filmation and the voice actors that was great about He-Man was the soundtrack. Haim Saban and Chucky Levi were pretty much the pinnacle men who crafted some of the best opening theme songs around the 80s and 90s.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, they, a lot of the music in He-Man I really like. It's funny because one day I was really bored and I was like, I wonder if there's any music from the Filmation He-Man. And, it's very hard because, back then they didn't really release a CD. And if they did, you were like the luckiest person in the world to find it, or a cassette tape with theme songs. And Orko's theme was such a disco. It's so weird, but I love it. I love Orko's theme. There was just, I don't know. And, even, when there was the Trouble theme, or it was just, the theme song just, really, it really gave the audience when they watched it. When we saw Orko, he was goofy, so that. But then when there was Trouble, when the Trollins, when He-Man, it's, I have to brush up on the characters' names a lot, but when Orko and Triella, when they had to go back to Tralla, and the Trollins were being captured by this demon-like creature for Skeletor, and he ended up being good. They had they had the music that I can't sing for the life of me, so I don't want to butcher anybody's names. But anyway, basically what I'm trying to say is that the music in the show was just so good. And I like the character of He-Man because you want to know something? I know it's cliche, and I know people are going to say, well, he's a good guy, so it comes with the territory. But He-Man was the type of character that, you know, if you pushed his buttons, you pushed his buttons. He will get back at you. But he tried to, if there was a villain, he really didn't want to use brute strength. The man was strong. You would say he's a Superman. Like, yes, he had, you know, minus the cape and the tights and all that, he was Superman. He was strong. He could pick up anything. And he was dangerous. Okay? He didn't use his powers for evil, you know, even though there was a clone, fake Tor, that Skeletor created. But, you know, He-Man was a dangerous person. And he always tried to, before he went into battle, listen, there's some good in you. I know there is. To all the villains. And even to Skeletor, you know, listen, there's some good in you. Why don't you use that positive energy? And people, I guess, nowadays wouldn't like that because it's like, oh, come on, I want to see some action. I want to see some fighting. I want to see some butt kicking. But if you really look into He-Man, he really didn't want to resort to violence. And if he did resort to violence, he didn't really want to, you know, he really wanted to say, come on, you know, try to use your badness or whatever you're using for, like, Manny Faces. I thought the Manny Faces was great because Manny Faces, and that's probably one of my favorite episodes, was a character who was considered a freak, and he was, you know, and he scared off those creatures, and he bullied them. And Skeletor captured him and wanted to use his powers for evil because he could turn his face into anything and he could be anybody he wanted. But He-Man was like, you're not really a bad guy. I could see that. And I don't know why. And that really touched him. And he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not a bad guy. I only do this because people are scared of me.
I know.
So I always liked that about He-Man. And that's why I love the show because... And I think that's why parents at the time liked the show, too, because it wasn't that he was promoting the action figures like some people think. And I can understand that because, you know, the figures were successful. And I'm sure there was a lot of kids out there who, when they watched the show, they had their He-Man toys out there. But I think if you really watched the show for what it's worth, you would see that He-Man... And I think this is... I think Renee Jacobs would back me up on this, even though she didn't do the voices on He-Man, but it's the type of show she would like. Definitely, it was the if you watch the show for the characters, you would like it a lot. Just like as people would watch April for her character and not for her looks, you know?
Absolutely, and I think that one of the great things about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the original, is that all the characters were wonderfully developed, and you got to get to know them, and you got to side with them.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, of course, a lot of people are going to find weaknesses to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, saying, oh, you know, it's not violent enough, or it's not dark enough, it's not serious enough. It's, you know, a lot of people think that He-Man is gay because of his attire. And, you know, the fact of it is that but I think that why He-Man is such a great character is not only because of He-Man himself, but his alter ego, Prince Adam. Prince Adam is a very interesting character because on the outside he's a big coward and he is very, very timid and he's easily pushed around by so many people, and you have the king and queen who are basically fearful of letting him take over Eternia because he needs to be able to, you know, he's like the wimp, and you never think that he could be He-Man, as opposed to like other superheroes in which they can hide their identities very well, and you wouldn't ever suspect that they would be the superheroes. With Prince Adam, yes, he gets pushed around. Yes, he's a coward. Yes, his father is always disappointed in him because he's not brave, he's not strong, he's not smart. But then when you see He-Man, you know that things are going to go down. And also, you know, you have all the other characters like Beastman and Orko and Battle Cat and all those characters that we see throughout the show. Yes, of course, they're not as, say, you know, like fully developed as they are with today's characters. And yes, the stories may not be as strong, but I think what it comes down to it is that He-Man is all about having fun, and it's all about a nice balance between lighthearted fun and a little bit of action, and you get to learn something from it. And I think that's what's missing with most cartoons nowadays.
Well, there's one thing I got to tell you, Patty.
What's up?
There's one thing you missed. There's not one character on that show that could be a coward like Prince Adam.
That is true.
And you know, and do you know who that is, or you want me to tell you?
Please.
Cringer.
Cringer. Yes, compared to Cringer, Adam is basically He-Man without even trying.
But you know, I love Cringer, so it's not, and you know, I don't have. I love Cringer. He's adorable, even when he was a cub. And when they did a flashback of how Prince Adam and Cringer met, and then also how they met Oracle when they were in the tar swamps. You know, but yeah, definitely agree with Patty 100%. So many great characters: Ram Man, Merman, a lot of man, Moss Man, Evelyn. So many great characters on that show.
Yeah, and we can't forget Skeletor. Skeletor has got to be one of the most iconic antagonists throughout the 80s.
I love Alan Oppenheimer Skeletor. Every time I want to try to do his voice so bad, but I know I fail miserably because you have to have that very high-pitched voice. In fact, on YouTube, along with Shredder, they have Skeletor. They have like a two-part of Skeletor's greatest insults because Skeletor was known, like Shredder, to hurl insults both at Trapjaw and Beastman, and of course Merman and Evelyn. And I love Evil, and I also love the Sorceress.
I think another thing that what made He-Man really stand out was that this was like the pinnacle of the 80s. So you had very few cartoons that can be able to be like huge standouts at that point.
Like what?
Well, you know, it was the beginning of the 80s, so this was before, you know, Turtles came out. This was before My Pet Monster came out. I think the real Ghostbusters also came out on that same year in 83, right, Kev?
No, they came out in 1986.
Okay, so 86. So, yeah, before Ghostbusters, before Turtles, before all those other cartoons that would cement ourselves, well, and also before Thundercats, He-Man was like top of the line when it came to Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I think another thing that, you know, it's kind of sad to tell you the truth that this generation probably won't even know He-Man unless they watch those Robot Chicken shorts.
That's right, Patty. So, Patty, tell us about the movie. What did you think of the movie?
Oh God. Where do I begin? If you think that, I mean, let's be honest. When it comes to most adaptations for TV shows, cartoons, video games, they can be a little bit hit and miss. With He-Man, on the other hand, it's a bit laughably bad. I mean, you know, Dolph Lundgren, you know, he's He-Man, and it made sense. You know, of course he was like the big buffed guy, you know, Ivan Drago from Rocky IV, and he had that look of He-Man. But unfortunately, there were just so many changes from the series, you know, like them going into this other dimension where they are on Earth, and it's so really bad, I think. And then the whole thing about you know, Skeletor, we do see him, and he's a really good highlight of the movie, but other than that, there's just so many changes to this movie that kind of deviated from what He-Man fans already knew of. And I know for some people it's one of those cult classics that they watch because it's so bad it's good, or because it has that nostalgia quality to them. It's kind of like with G.I. Joe Retaliation and Rise of Cobra. It has that same thing. It's like, it's a dumb movie based on a toy, based on an animated series. We didn't expect it to be like good, but still, you know, for some people they can be able to overlook these flaws. But as for me, I don't like it. I don't like this movie at all.
That's true. What do you think about the upcoming He-Man movie?
Well, I don't really know too much about the details, but other than the ones that you just said earlier. But you know what? It sounds really interesting. From what I understand, there's like this plot about them going to war in Eternia, and it will actually feature more magical elements, which is good because the original He-Man movie, they didn't spend any time in Eternia, which was a huge disappointment.
Oh yeah. Now, what did you think of the 2003 series?
The 2002 He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the reboot. Well, before we talk about that, shouldn't we talk about the sequel, the one that came out in 1990? Or should we talk about She-Ra? Well, let's briefly talk about She-Ra, because She-Ra, the Princess of Power, is a spin-off of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So let's briefly talk about that.
Go ahead, Patty.
Well,
What's your thoughts on She-Ra?
Well, She-Ra is pretty much the same as Adam. So She-Ra, otherwise known as Adora, apparently that she is the twin sister of Adam. And
by the way, I hate to interrupt this for Patty, but I can't tell you how many times, and this is not a feminist thing, how many T-shirts and posters I've seen of She-Ra that says "Girl Power" on it. I think I've seen more She-Ra with the term "Girl Power" on it than Wonder Woman or Supergirl or Batgirl. So whenever there's, or Miss Piggy, so when there's girl power, I always think of She-Ra, which is cool. It really is. It's cool.
yeah, because you have to consider that there were very few females who ended up getting their own TV show that was kind of a badass. I mean, you had, Gem, you had Strawberry Shortcake, you had Rainbow Bright, you had the My Little Ponies, but they were just, truly for girls. You had characters such as She-Ra and Jitara from Thundercats, and you had very few female protagonists who can be able to kick as much ass as the men. But the problem with She-Ra and the Princess of Power is that it was just basically He-Man in the Masters of the Universe, except with it's a different world, it's a different villain, it's different characters. And of course, she's involved with this rebellious group, and instead of Cringer turning into Battle Cat, she has some sort of horse that turns into this flying Pegasus. And other than that, I think, in my opinion, with She-Ra, it's, this was definitely a show that was trying to market it for girls. It really tried to show off the girl power, just like you said previously, in which girls can be able to kick as much butt as the men. This was around the early 80s, so it had that real big feminist quality that was going on at the time. In which women were, getting jobs, and they were able to go to school, and they were able to do just as much things as the men were. And it just shows that girls can do anything, which, in itself, many people think it's silly.
Absolutely.
But nowadays, it's actually really appreciative, because even nowadays, how many female protagonists do we know of? There's very rarely any. And I also, the movie that featured She-Ra, The Secret of the Sword, I love the opening theme song.
Well, tell us about the movie. What do you think of Secret of the Sword?
Well, Secret of the Sword was definitely kind of like a pilot to She-Ra, the Princess of Power. It tells the backstory of She-Ra, and it tells the backstory about how she got separated from, her family. She was transferred into the other world, and then it basically just builds the story of what would be featured in the show. And a couple of times, there are some moments in which it's kind of laughably bad, but other than that, it's okay. I mean, it's not a good movie, but it's not bad for a pilot for an upcoming TV show. But I do love the opening theme song. There were a couple of moments in which She-Ra and He-Man actually met up together besides Princess of Power. There was the He-Man She-Ra Christmas special.
Oh, what'd you think of that? And what'd you think of Skeletor in that? Because I love Skeletor in that one.
It's actually very funny. There are some moments in which I did laugh myself so hard with the Skeletor moments. I think for many people, this is probably one of the best, or maybe the weirdest Christmas special that ever shown in the 80s, but I can't help but just laugh and find it to be a little bit corny and cheesy, but just enjoyable.
Oh, definitely. What did you think of that little creature that was always with Skeletor?
Yeah, I remember that. I thought it was cute. I mean, when you have something this cute, being around with Skeletor, there were some moments in which he gets frustrated and angry, and the way he just overacts is just hilarious to see at times.
Alright, now what did you think of the new adventures of He-Man?
The 1990 sequel. Now, this definitely took it in a different direction, basically at the time in which, the 80s are gone, we're going to go more hardcore. Now, this was a show that I never saw growing up, and I rediscovered...
There's two words I gotta say to everybody. Slush Head. He was like a villain on the show, and it was just, I love Slush Head.
Yeah, I was surprised to see how much of a difference that this show was as compared to the 80s one. There was definitely had different characters, different animation, different stories, but in some ways it was able to keep what made He-Man He-Man. Although for some people they felt like it was a completely different direction. Others, they didn't really care about it. I mean, you have to understand that this was a brand new generation of kids who were getting into cartoons. And with 1990, this was almost at the pinnacle point in which you had a lot of cartoons that were featuring around that year. I mean, I think a couple of years later, we had other cartoons that would pretty much break the mold, which we've already discussed about multiple times over casual chats, such as The Ren and Stimpy Show, Rocko's Modern Life, and so on and so forth. But with this incarnation of He-Man, it's not too bad, I mean, it's okay, but it just doesn't have the charm that the 1983 one has.
Exactly.
And I know with you, Kevin, you love the original He-Man. I mean, it's like up there as one of your all-time favorites.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a big fan of the 1990. I saw it as a kid, but I was more into the 1983 He-Man action figure series. I just was not I was not really into the the 1990s. For some reason, I just couldn't get into it as I got older. But I did watch it as a kid. Yeah. So, Patty, tell us about the 2003 series, which is the last of the He-Man. We got to make this really special, so...
Alright, well, this is the final one. That is the 2002 reboot that showed up on Cartoon Network. Now, with this, they went in a completely different direction, making it more gritty, more darker. The characters were portrayed a little bit different. They were able to have homages to the original 1983 series. And this one, unlike the 1983 series, it had a better story. But at the same time, some of the characters... it tried to have like a balance between good characters and good story, but I think that the story was much better in the 2002 version, and the characters were much better in the 1983 version. Now, there's a lot of debate on Prince Adam in this incarnation about him. He's the prince, and he's like the klutzy one and stuff like that, and he's being trained by the sorceress, and the sorceress in this version is a bitch.
Yeah, don't you think? I thought she was, man.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, we already know that the sorceress in the original He-Man, she kind of, had some insults to say to Prince Adam, but at least she was, at least she had, like, a feeling of kindness towards him. Like,
nice, like a supportive, nice, like a mother figure to him.
Yeah, exactly. What she was doing, she was being sarcastic and pushing around Adam because she thinks that Adam has potential to be the king of Eternia. But in this incarnation, she's basically just pushing him around to show off his full potential, but in a very mean-spirited kind of way.
Wow.
And also, I think that the music wasn't as memorable as the original. I don't think Haim Saban and Shuki Levi worked on the soundtrack.
No.
And also, of course, unfortunately, the show didn't last very long. It was canceled even before they even finished their second season. But there were a couple of really great inclinations that happened in the show. Like, they gave a nice big update to Skeletor by making him a lot more dark and sinister. And also, they had the inclusion of Snake Man.
Snake Man. I remember Snake Man.
Snake Man was a really awesome villain. Very dark, very sinister, very creepy. I mean, he was just as on the top as Skeletor.
Wow.
But unfortunately, like we said before, the show didn't really last very long. In fact, there were rumors that in Season 3, they were actually going to have She-Ra in the show.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting take to see She-Ra, you know?
Yeah, but just like with the 2011 Thundercats, people hated this show. The people who grew up with He-Man in the 1980s, they hated this show, and it was quickly canceled due to extremely low ratings. And nowadays, it's built up this huge cult following. So
That's amazing.
yeah. So is there anything that you want to say about He-Man right before we go, Kev?
No. I think that pretty much sums it up. I mean, I think I pretty much said what I had to say.
All right then. Well, that concludes this week.
How much I really love this show.
Well, that concludes this week's episode of Casual Chats, and we just want to say a great big happy 30th anniversary to He-Man.
Happy birthday, He-Man.
Okay, so tune in next time as we celebrate another big anniversary. Although not as big as He-Man's birthday, but nonetheless, it will be a big one. It's going to be a double-header podcast with us celebrating the 20th anniversaries of Legends of the Hidden Temple and Rocko's Modern Life.
Wait, don't forget, we got another podcast coming up, Patty. We're doing our next podcast will be about the Toxic Crusaders. Ooh. And we're also doing another podcast on Dragon Ball Z, followed by Looney Tunes and Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader, Patty's favorite all-time movie.
Oh, God, no.
Oh, God, yes. And then afterwards, our last one until we wrap up things for Season 1 will be Sonic the Hedgehog.
Ooh, that'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, until then, we will definitely see you in the next one. And as we say here, according to He-Man, I have the power!
And as according to Patty, what we say around Patty is, oh God, not another one.
Okay, well, we'll definitely catch you in the next one, so bye-bye.
Stay around, everybody, and don't forget, you can't have Attack without the 50-Foot Cheerleader, Patty's favorite all-time movie. We will be reviewing it as we get our first impressions on it. Until then, stay tuned.
See ya.